Today we are going to talk about Venus-Saturn synastry and how this can turn out in romantic relationships. So with Venus-Saturn synastry, there's often an age gap between the people who are involved in this relationship. So mostly the Saturn person is older and the Venus person is younger. But this is not a stereotypical scenario. It could also be that the Saturn person is just more mature than the Venus person. So without bringing the stereotypical explanation for Saturn, we can also say that maybe this Saturnian person has more wisdom to offer the Venus person. But what Saturn also does is that it creates a lot of coldness between the two of them. Like the relationship gets cold, harsh. It's very difficult to have the softness that romantic aspects of love should bring in. So there could be possibility of separation. There could be this delusion of hot and cold, but technically Saturn doesn't do the whole hot and cold stuff because Saturn is cold. It's never hot. But what could possibly happen in such synastry is that two people could come together. They could fall madly in love with each other or madly dependent on each other, and suddenly separate. There could be also difficulty in communicating with each other. There could be some kind of restriction that happens that doesn't let the romantic flow of relationships happen, which makes this synastry one of the most difficult synastry to deal with at a younger when you're younger. It gets very difficult to deal with the synastry, but these days, there's just so much difference in how people used to be and how youth are at this point of time. There's so much growth and so much maturity that's happening, and with the youth. So what I was trying to say is, in the current generation or in the current era, there's just so much difference in how maturity is perceived. There's so much more growth and harsher trauma that is being put upon such a younger generation that often a 25-year-old is acting like a 32-year-old, a 21-year-old is acting like a 29-year-old. So considering all these possibilities, it could just be that the Saturn person is younger but more wiser than the Venus person. But the harshness of this aspect is what is deeply felt in the first go. So there's this tremendous pain that happens in the heart between the two parties. There is a difficulty in sustaining the relationship, even though Saturn wants to sustain. So much possibility of the union not happening in the moment they want this to happen, especially if they meet at a very young part of their life, or if they are a younger soul type, like a baby soul, if you believe in the soul types. It would take them another lifetime to come together. I wouldn't call this twin flame synastry because I haven't researched enough on talking about how twin flame synastry works. So please don't confuse it with that. Venus Saturn synastry is often codependent, which doesn't exist in twin flame relationships, because twin flame relationships are less codependent and more of soul growth and interdependency. If you have to understand the difference between codependency and interdependency and toxicity to understand what I'm trying to say over here. So Venus Saturn synastry can get very toxic. There are a couple of things in Venus Saturn synastry. So there's a Venus square Saturn, there's a Venus conjunct Saturn, there's a Venus sextile Saturn, and the Venus opposition Saturn. None of this is easy, but if I have to pick the easiest among all the synastry, would be the Venus sextile Saturn, and the toughest here will be the Venus conjunct Saturn. So and you can read the others accordingly. So what happens with the Venus and Saturn synastry is that the Venus person is deeply enchanted by the Saturn person, and the Saturn person is here to collect some kind of a karma from Venus person, which makes it very difficult for the Venus person to be around the Saturn person, but also have difficulty letting go, because it often becomes a part of a karmic cycle that started off a couple of lifetimes ago. Or maybe the Venus person betrayed the Saturn person in a different lifetime, so the Saturn person is just here to give the Venus person the same pain. It is not often compared to like a Pluto synastry or a Scorpio synastry, where when I say Scorpio synastry, two planets falling in Scorpio, where the betrayal part is taken in a form of revenge. It is just that there's a lot of distance that is set upon the Venus person, a lot of coldness that is thrown onto the Venus person by the Saturn person, that Venus feels devoid of love. So it starts to yearn for the Saturn person. It wants more of the Saturn person. It gets obsessed about the Saturn person and unable to move on to another relationship. So this is a very binding synastry as well, because Saturn likes to hold on to whatever it binds with. So in worst case scenario, if the Saturn person is toxic, if the Saturn person is unevolved, he could use all kinds of manipulative techniques to control the Venus person, and the Venus person will feel entrapped in the synastry, not knowing how to let go, not knowing how to move on. And it's one of those synastries where moving on gets very difficult. It is very similar to how it is with Venus Saturn in natal chart. When you have Venus and Saturn together in a natal chart, what happens is that when you fall in love, you take a very long time to get over that person. Although if you go and talk to a Venus Saturn person in their natal, they would behave like they've moved on, but that's not how it is. They've personally, internally not moved on, but they're gonna pretend like everything's okay. So it's similarly with Venus Saturn synastry. Moving on gets very difficult. So what happens is the Venus is often brutally traumatized in the relationship, and also habituated to being around the Saturn person, the toxicity, the codependency, and all that. And eventually, I think the Venus is so drained, it's just really ready to let go of the idea of love and just concentrate on other things or move on to other aspects of life, if it has any, if considering, Venus is a very feminine sign. So in this relationship, Venus would often represent the feminine side of the partner, irrespective of what gender you're looking at. So just if Venus does manage to let go, the Saturn will come back and try its ways to come, reignite the relationship or keep the thread. Saturn has this habit in any kind of Saturn synastry. Saturn has this habit of being the puppeteer, where it makes the planet the puppet. So it wants that control, and this is the most common representation of Saturn. I know it sounds brutal, but it works in relationships. People like toxicity, and toxicity binds people together, and it helps in long-lasting marriages. So in that way, so what happens is when the Venus moves on, the Saturn comes back and tries to play these little games to tie the Venus back together, and sometimes the Venus falls for it, and sometimes it just gets as cold as the Saturn. So this is the negative side of the synastry. So let's talk about when this synastry might work out for you. So when it comes to the synastry, so age could be a very important factor to make this relationship work. So like I was saying, so what happens is when the Venus wants to let go of the Saturn person doesn't like it, and he comes back or she comes back to rekindle the relationships with all possible hopes that the Venus person wants. So and the other, okay, I forgot where I left the last time. Okay, my video got into the cases in which the synastry might possibly work out for the two of you would be when you've attained a certain maturity in your life, which usually comes in your mid to late 30s. If you meet this person after the age of 36, it would work out for you. If you meet this person, let's say, at an age of 30, and the person has crossed the age of 36, the Saturn person has crossed the age of 36, then also it can work out for you, because you have crossed these years of Venus maturation, Mars maturation, Sun maturation. So the usual problems that come in relationships that start early in life, that includes ego issues and the demands that the Venusian partner has, or the control issues that the Saturn partner has, would have tamed down just a bit. So it would be easier to work around the relationships, because both partners after a certain age have realistic expectations about life, and this can help in the grounding of the synastry, because Venus Saturn is practicality. It's the practical aspects of love. It's not the romantic aspect of love. It's not the delusional aspect of love. So in this synastry, even if the person is a romantic person, if you expect something like a Bollywood kind of a romance, or I don't know, like a serendipity, the movie Serendipity, or what do you call that, rom-com kind of romance, it's not gonna happen early on in life, because this is what this synastry is based on, practicality. So two people coming in together to make things work. This could work very well if you're getting married late, late as in after the age of 30, 32, where you just want a practical marriage. There is definitely love, but you want to make babies. The Venus person wants to take care of the home situation, while the Saturn person can go home and provide for the Venus person, which is something would be very, very easy for the Saturn person to do in the synastry, because Saturn is cold and it wants to work and it wants to provide, but it doesn't come from an emotional perspective, but more like a financial perspective, where the Saturn person works very hard and makes a lot of money for the Venus person, so that they can have this luxurious lifestyle, and also, you know, parent their kids. It's not a mommy, baby making aspect, but it's a very good sustainable aspect, or a conjunction, when it comes to, you know, having a practical a practical approach to love, which is quite a contradiction in itself, but it works for some people, like Capricornian people, people with strong Saturn in sidereal. If like I do sidereal and a little bit of tropical, so in sidereal astrology there's Pushya Nakshatra, there is Uttarabhadrapada Nakshatra, there's Anuradha Nakshatra. These people will like this synastry, and only after a certain age will it work out for them, because often all these three nakshatras, which are ruled by Saturn, struggles a lot in sustaining a relationship. Saturn is lost. Saturn is lost as a planet. And I know it's controversial that I'm saying that, but Saturn doesn't know what to do. Saturn wants to be taught how to lead a life. You know, if you meet a Saturn dominant person, you'd be surprised how lost they are in life. They just know how to do things in a methodical way. They're very Virgovian, if you know what I mean, like very sixth house, as in they like routine, they like methods, but the moment one thing goes off, they get lost. So it's not easy for them to go out of routine, or out of their way to make something work, which is what love and romance is all about. It's about doing. Interruptions that has been made while I was making this video clearly explains how the synastry works. I had been interrupted like 4 times now. 2 times my lighting just went off and stuff like that. So it's a start and stop kind of a relationship when it happens early on in life. So what I was saying is that Saturn likes mundane, Saturn likes practicality, Saturn likes routine. And when it comes to romance, most Venusian people want the Saturn person to do something that is a little more romantic. Some people like chocolate, some people like flowers, some people like candlelit dinner. So this synastry will work out for people who have strong Saturnian qualities associated with them, like Saturn in first house, and the 3 nakshatra that I've mentioned, Saturn in Uttarabhadrapada Anuradha, or Pushya Nakshatra, or just people having a strong Anuradha, Pushya Nakshatra, or Uttarabhadrapada placements, Saturn in Capricorn, Saturn in Aquarius. Aquarius is still a little more fun than Capricorn. Like Capricorn is what I see Venus Saturn as. Like imagine somebody who has a Venus in Capricorn. They are practical lovers. So if you are in love with the Venus in Capricorn, you will understand what I'm trying to say, because the romantic aspects of love is blindsided for them. So they don't see all that. They just see practicality. They see money. They see how they can pay your bills, or how they can fund your education. So if you have Venus in Capricorn, this will work out very well for you, because your expectations of love is very practical. If you have Saturn in Libra, again, this will work out for you, because Saturn gets exalted in Libra, and again, you are very practical in love, but still Saturn and Libra will at least have one broken relationship. Saturn and Libra, if they get married early, they'll at least have one broken relationship, because Saturn here in this lifetime is here to teach you teach you how to sustain relationships, how to be a little more considerate, because you have a lot of relationship karma from your past life. So I think I have covered quite a bit of how Venus and Saturn together works in Synastry, and a little bit about Venus in Capricorn and Saturn exaltation. Yeah.